So I'm going to be honest with you guys. Back then, I mentioned in a video that IDV lore is too complex to be understood and that there are often contradictions between each piece of the story. Now, I found a similar thing in Alice's newest letter. I'm not sure if it's just me feeling this way or if any of you guys also found it strange. So I made this video to dive in and talk about some details in her letter because clearly there are many, many things that I don't understand from it. There are just some contradicting things in her newest letter with the overall lore, especially with the White Sand Street Asylum lore. I can't even guess if the orphanage that later turned into an asylum in this letter was meant to be the White Sand Street. And if we assume that it is, there are still many things that do not fit with the asylum lore. So guys, today, let's dive into it. And if someone out there knows better than I do, please tell me about the details of this letter and its connection to the overall lore. So guys, let's start the discussion by exploring Alice's letter first. In this newest letter, an unknown investigator writes to someone named Ollie Lamb, which is implied to be Alice herself, about their investigation of someone named Mr. Blanche, which I assume is Orpheus. The unknown investigator begins their statement by saying that the sources gathered for the information were disordered and remain open to question. So in other words, their investigation results about Orpheus were, at best, vague. This already discouraged me from diving further, but I went in anyway. The investigator then reveals that after returning from Greece, Mr. Blanche came back to London before departing once more. During his stay in London, he visited a local orphanage, which had become his habit whenever he returned there. The letter specifically says, local orphanage, so I assume that this orphanage is also in London. This is one of the details that bugged me, which I will explain later. The investigator goes on to say that after his last visit, a great fire broke out there, resulting in a massive loss of life. A year later, a certain nobleman, Count Barriere, rebuilt the remains of the orphanage, turning it into a mental asylum. After that tragedy, however, Mr. Blanche never set foot there again, suggesting that the person he went to see in the orphanage most likely lost their life in the fire. The investigator, however, decides to pursue this further, trying to find out who Mr. Blanche had been visiting. One name then comes up, Alice de Ross. The investigator later mentions the connection between Alice de Ross and Mr. Blanche, explaining how Mr. Blanche's father was once an employee of the de Ross family, and that there are suspicions that he might have been involved in the Elitist Manor incident. Furthermore, it is revealed that Mr. Blanche left home the year following the incident. To dig deeper into Alice de Ross, the investigator checks the documents of the orphanage and finds more information about her. It is stated that in the third year of her admission, Alice received improved medical attention. But then, it is also mentioned that starting from age 12, all of her medical records have vanished. When the fire incident occurred, Alice's name was listed among the victims. However, even this remains uncertain. The investigator checks with former employees of the orphanage, but they do not know why Alice's name was included among the victims. The letter closes with the investigator expressing their determination to continue the investigation. From this letter, I want to focus on one important piece of information, the orphanage. It is said that Mr. Blanche, or Orpheus, returned from Greece to London, and during his stay, he visited a certain local orphanage. This had become his habit whenever Orpheus was back home, which I take to mean that he routinely visited the orphanage whenever he was in London. Since the letter specifically mentions a local orphanage, I assume that this orphanage was also located in London. The reason he visited the orphanage was because of Alice. I assume that he wanted to meet her there. Whether he actually met her or not, I cannot really tell yet. Orpheus's first letter did mention that he was not allowed to meet her, but it also does not specify which orphanage it referred to. I'm pointing this out because it seems to me that the orphanage Orpheus visited while in London was not the White Sand Street Asylum, and this is the confusing part for me. The White Sand Street Asylum lore mentions that it was originally an orphanage owned by someone named Creature Pearson. After a certain church investigated his orphanage, Pearson transferred ownership to the church. The church later turned the orphanage into an asylum, or, as it is written in Emily's deduction quest, a mental hospital. The orphanage in Alice's letter also presents something similar. Sometime after Orpheus's last visit, the orphanage was caught in a great fire, resulting in a devastating loss of life. Among the victims was Alice de Ross. Though it is likely that this was a faked death, given that no former staff of the orphanage knew whether Alice really died there. The key point here is that this orphanage was caught in a fire and was later rebuilt with the help of Count Barriere, eventually becoming an asylum. This whole orphanage story is quite similar to the White Sand Street Asylum, and when I first read the letter, I thought that the orphanage mentioned there was the White Sand Street after all. However, it is worth mentioning that the White Sand Street was located in Devonshire, while the orphanage mentioned in Alice's letter was in London. For context, these two places are different and are set more than 200 miles apart from each other. So, does this mean that the orphanage in Alice's letter is not the White Sand Street, but a completely different one? Well, that's what still confuses me because I cannot find any clear answer. Even the lore enthusiasts in the IDV Discord server have divided opinions on this, and after chatting with them for a while, I came across two main interpretations. The first suggests that the orphanage in Alice's letter is indeed the White Sand Street Asylum, and that previous mentions of it in various sources are simply cases of poorly written lore. The second, however, suggests that there are multiple orphanages in the IDV universe, and that the one mentioned in Alice's letter is different from the White Sand Street Asylum. The question now is, how can there be two different interpretations? Okay, so the first theory suggests that the orphanage in Alice's letter is indeed the White Sand Street Asylum. There are several things that support this idea. First is the little girl's reaction during the time of reunion event, specifically Act 2. The little girl, who is technically Alice in this event, says that the White Sand Street Asylum is a place that holds nothing but bad memories, and that she does not want to talk about it. This seems to indicate that Alice did spend time there. Furthermore, Florian's deduction quest also suggests that he spent time in the White Sand Street Orphanage. We know from his lore that the orphanage was burned down, and that he rescued several people from the fire, although it is also suspected that he was the one who started it. The burned orphanage matches with the one in Alice's letter that was said to be caught in a fire, which suggests that the two places, the White Sand Street Orphanage and the one in Alice's letter, might be the same. Still, this theory does not address the fact that the two orphanages are located in different places, Devonshire and London. Furthermore, in Alice's letter, it is said that after the orphanage burned down, it was rebuilt with the help of Count Barriere and turned into an asylum. Alice was presumed dead in the fire, which might have been a cover-up, considering that he was later taken to Melbourne. Now, Alice was taken to Melbourne when she was 14 years old, and she was born in 1881. This suggests that the fire happened in 1895, when she would have been 14. So, after the fire, the orphanage was rebuilt into an asylum, meaning that this transformation would also have happened after 1895. However, this does not match with the overall asylum lore based on other sources. For example, Creature's second letter mentions that 10 years before his game, he captured Lisa Beck, who tried to escape the White Sand Street Asylum, and sent her back there. His game took place in 1899, so 10 years earlier would be 1889. Now, do you see how messy this gets? In that letter, the orphanage had already become an asylum by 1889, while Alice's letter implies that it only turned into an asylum after the Great Fire, which would be after 1895. And it is not just Creature's letter. Emma's sixth letter, as well as Emily's deduction quest, also weaken this theory. Because of that, the only possible explanation left for this theory is that the asylum mentioned in earlier sources is the result of poorly written lore. Now, the second theory is that the orphanage in Alice's letter and the White Sand Street Orphanage are actually two different places. This theory supports the fact that both orphanages are located in different areas. It is also supported by the lack of any confirmed evidence that the White Sand Street Orphanage was ever caught in a fire. Lore pieces from Creature and Robbie suggest that the White Sand Street Orphanage changed ownership without any fire incident. Even though Florian's deduction quest mentions a fire, it never specifies or whether it was the event that led to the orphanage becoming an asylum. But again, this theory does not align with the fact that little Alice, in the time of reunion event, mentioned that the White Sand Street Asylum holds nothing but bad memories, as if implying that she was sent there. At this point, I'm already confused about Alice's letter. Adding to that confusion is Ada and Emil's timeline. They both met in the White Sand Street Asylum in 1893. It was already an asylum at that time, so which asylum are we even talking about in Alice's letter? Also, if you notice, there is a line that specifically mentions that starting from the age of 12, all of Alice's medical records vanished. If we look at the timeline, when Alice was 12, the year would have been 1893. In that same year, Ada and Emil escaped from the White Sand Street Asylum, bringing along the patient list. Could this just be a coincidence? Did Alice's records vanish because Ada took them along? I honestly cannot answer that, but I do think there is a possibility. After all, if we think about it, why would Orpheus want a patient list from the asylum? Ada's lore mentions that he needed it for inspiration for his novel, but I doubt that was the real reason. Perhaps he was looking into something else, such as Alice's medical records and possibly those of other patients as well. In other words, Orpheus may have wanted the patient list from the White Sand Street Asylum to find information about Alice. Does that mean Alice was in the White Sand Street all along? Honestly, I really cannot guess this one, and this deduction itself might be a stretch, but I cannot help thinking about his true motive for obtaining that list. In the end, this letter genuinely confuses me, to the point where I cannot fully grasp the truth about the orphanage. Maybe future letters or new revelations will give us more clues. I sincerely hope so. Still, one thing for certain is that we did get some information about what happened to both Orpheus and Alice after the manor incident. Orpheus was trying to meet Alice after the incident, and Alice later sought Orpheus once she became an adult. That's why, if you have any more info, theories, or context about her letter, feel free to add it in the comment section. Thanks for staying with me, and have a good day.